Hello everyone, this is the Neuromancer here to give you a reply to Buc Brony's recent video on headcanons. And while I thought it was most definitely a good video, I feel an important part of these kinds of discussions is left out. And that is the subject of fridge logic and the role it plays in analysis. Now, fridge logic, as well as fridge horror and fridge brilliance, exist in every work of fiction. Now here I'm going to explain a couple instances where fridge logic and fridge brilliance fit into MLP just to show you that it's there, but I'm going to use fridge horror to show you how a story can actually run on fridge concepts. So without any further ado, let's begin. Now, starting with fridge logic, this is the kind of thing that you would usually make a headcanon for. This is where there's an inconsistency, typically a minor inconsistency, but not always, that is apparent in the fiction. And this is the sort of thing you would usually make a headcanon for, or you would apply fridge brilliance or fridge horror to after you think about it some more. An example of this in general fiction would be, say, you are watching a movie and a man storms into a house with a gun and he fires it 3 times. Then it cuts to his victim, who has 3 bullet wounds and then is shot 4 more times. Now, some viewers may ignore this and not notice a discrepancy. But as someone who knows guns like me, the revolver he's using only has 6 cylinders. How did he fire 7 shots? That is the sort of thing you may invent a headcanon for or something. In MLP, an example of this would be pretty much everything Antony C said in A Royal Canterlot Wedding, such as how Queen Chrysalis had to sneak into the city to threaten the city when she could have just let the army in, or that her attacking Celestia seemed to be Plan B, and there's no evidence given for Plan A, things like that. Now we move on to fridge brilliance, and it, along with fridge horror, are pretty different from fridge logic in that here you believe you have found a contradiction or an inconsistency. However, it turns out that when you think it through, it actually isn't a contradiction or inconsistency. The story answers it by itself, it probably just didn't shove the answer into your face. And you probably have to think it through. It's a good indication that the writer of the story probably expects you to know how to put 2 and 2 together if he implements these, usually. Take the gun example I just said earlier. If you find out that in reviewing the movie, the character who is shooting turns out to have a second revolver, but just no one brought any attention to it, but it's visible in a few scenes, then it becomes fridge brilliance when you realize that after he unloaded all 6 cylinders with the first gun, he drew his second one to fire the 7th shot, for example. In MLP, an example of this is Sleepless in Ponyville. Some people may have wondered how Rainbow Dash got to Scootaloo so quickly before she fell into the waterfall. The answer to that would be Luna can dreamwalk. It would be no problem for Luna to just enter Rainbow Dash's dream, wake her up, and tell her exactly where Scootaloo is, for example. Now for fridge horror, I'm going to use it to explain how fridge elements can be relevant to a plot in major ways that the writer intended. And for this, I'm going to use a series that essentially pulls a 180 from MLP, and that is Marble Hornets. Now, first, before we get into it, I'm going to explain what fridge horror is. And that is something that seems normal, maybe not even an inconsistency for that matter. It can appear as that. But when you think about it, it later turns out to be very horrifying. Now, I'm going to use a couple examples of fridge horror, but for the first one, I'm going to need you to watch this clip.
Alright, it's recording.
Okay. This is the gazebo where I want Brian to come back and reflect. Later in the movie, this will probably be about 3/4 of the way through.
This will just be by himself, right?
Yeah. I'm thinking about maybe putting in and we'll have him like reflect and decide to actually go back to Sarah, try to win her back.
Now, as it is later pointed out by Jay, in this clip you may have noticed the video clipping and you probably most definitely heard the audio errors. Whenever you see or hear these, it means that something anomalous is happening. Typically Slenderman is near, or you're in a weird location, or maybe a proxy is nearby, stuff like that. Now, later at the end of entry 5, we get this. This tells us that Slenderman was nearby in those situations, or a proxy was. And this can generate fridge horror for previous entries where you thought nothing was going on. However, it can definitely do it later in the series, because this becomes a long-running trait of the Slenderman, or as he's known here, the Operator. Because every time you think that Jay is alone, or that nothing bad is going to happen, or that he's just minding his own business, you may get that distortion and you realize, wait a minute, Slenderman is watching, or Masky is going to come out, or he's going to be in a real bad situation very soon. And as a viewer, you know to immediately start doing things like scanning the background and things like that to see if you can see Slenderman before Jay does. If he even does. This next example is unlike Entry 5, because whereas Entry 5 explicitly told you something to look for so that it could generate more fridge horror in future entries, and if you're rewatching previous entries, this one in Entry 9 is far more subtle.
Well, no, we can't. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you come out of public place.
Good thing I didn't have anything to do later today,
Yeah,
you know.
12 to 1.
Why would you have anything to do anyway? You knew you were coming on set. You knew this could take a while.
Yeah, it was
Obviously
supposed to be an
it is.
afternoon shoot, though.
You guys would do it right first
So it was
time.
afternoon shoot. I didn't even buy lunch
Let's
for
just
this
do it
shoot.
Let's just do it
Let's just
again.
do it again.
Just stop.
Alright.
Action.
He seemed really distant ever since he came back,
Cut
you know?
from the beginning.
Rolling.
What? Roll. Did you not have it recording during the break? I told you to keep the camera recording at all times. Oh, how long was it off?
I forgot for a second.
You may have been wondering what's going on there, or why did you even bother to show this to us? Well, believe it or not, Slenderman actually is there. However, it's really subtle because there is no video or audio distortion. Remember how before Seth cuts the camera, you can hear the noises of children playing in the background? And how after he turns it back on, you notice that there are no children in the background? Well, guess who Slenderman's favorite targets are? Well, this is a particular example of where you had to put two and two together and the story just didn't explicitly tell you. It's something that you had to figure out on your own. And that's kind of the difference between a headcanon and fridge horror or fridge brilliance. A headcanon is something that you have to figure out by yourself, but it can't be proven true or false. There's sort of evidence for it, but you can't really disprove it either, as I've just said. Fridge horror or fridge brilliance, on the other hand, are things that you really can piece together, but you have to be observant enough to see them. So sometimes it can be an issue of, if there's an inconsistency, then it's a plot hole, but other times it could be they're just using fridge concepts and we just weren't observant enough. Anyway, it's just an interesting thing to think about, and that's all I wanted to throw into this conversation. So with that out of the way, this is the Oneromancer. Have a nice day.
So you've had a nightmare, and a nightmare of such slow-burning blood poison that you don't even realize it's a nightmare at first. The memories in your head chased the next night by the memories in your gut, like a physical grinding inside you, like something stuck to your stomach lining, like memories of what you ate that day, or memories of girls that make the walls of your thudding, muffled heart grow tight. Hidden for years and greeting you at night, and now you realize what a nightmare it was, even though at the time you thought it was fine. And that's the part that troubles you most. It was fine at the time.